Welcome to memoQ Talks, where we talk to industry leaders about their experiences, lessons learned, and what works best across all areas of localization. Now here's your host.
Paula, Pascale, how are you guys?
Great. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for coming on memoQ Talks. I am really excited to talk to you about the new Vancouver Localization User Group and your first event here. Before we do that, Paula, you're based in Vancouver, right?
That's right. Yeah.
What's the localization community like there?
Well, there are localizers here when I looked on LinkedIn. And, my very first job at Seagate Software, now SAP, I know they have a localization team. But in terms of community getting together, we haven't really had much of that, which was really why I wanted to revive something that wasn't quite there. Start it up, inspired by Slug.
Yeah, it's funny because I did a look on LinkedIn and I just did a search for Vancouver and then I typed in for roles related to localization. And I found several hundred people, but it's interesting. Sometimes, you're part of an industry, but people aren't talking. And then you have things like the Seattle Localization User Group here in Seattle in Bellevue, that kind of brings people together. We also have Local Lunch that brings people together. So it's really nice that you guys are kicking this off in Vancouver. And I want to get into the details of what exactly, the Vancouver Localization User Group or VLUG is. But Pascale, you're based in Seattle, right?
That's right. I actually relocated to the Seattle area about 2 years ago. And I'm sorry?
I was going to say, what brought you out here?
The weather, actually.
The weather. Oh my gosh.
But actually, I'm originally from Canada, from Quebec, and I've been in the localization industry for over 2 decades. And when Paula said she wanted to start a community in Vancouver, it really resonated with me because as a Canadian, also French Canadian, and understanding the importance of localization and translation, just from growing up there and actually having learned English in Vancouver, I was really, really excited to help her set up the community and really bring people along because being new to the Seattle area and engaging with Slug and Launch Seattle, it's been really helpful for me to get to know people in the industry over here.
Yeah, likewise for me, being based here in the East Side, but most of my time in the localization industry was actually in Asia. And when I came back here in 2017, the Slug community was very active. They were having 4 super robust events every year, and then some awesome offshoot events. And so it was really helpful for me to kind of just meet so many different people. And there's learning opportunities, networking opportunities. Of course, we got to the pandemic, and then Slug basically just shut down like everything else did. And maybe about a year and a half ago, Allison Furch at Gala, who had been kind of leading behind the scenes or in terms of the organizational aspects of Slug, asked Rick Antezana and I if we had an interest in kind of taking over the leadership of Slug. And it's interesting, though, because when we came back after the pandemic, it took a while to get the momentum and the cadence back, right? People were like, oh, we forgot. And so I can imagine with you guys, you're starting something completely new, that there's all kinds of challenges and opportunities. Let's talk about VLUG. What are you envisioning from are you talking about regular events and what type of events?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I was really inspired by Slug. And in fact, pre-pandemic, my team, some of the members of my team and I made a road trip down to Seattle to attend a Slug event, and being asked at the border what we were doing and telling them we were going to see Slug. Asked all sorts of questions, but they waved us through. But I'm envisioning something really similar, having some solid panels, some solid events, and really just generally creating a local community where we can come and share best practices and learn from each other, lean on each other, because that's really the majority of where I have learned from is from the localization community. And so having something locally, I think, would be fantastic. And especially, like you said, there's hundreds of localization professionals in Vancouver. And let's play some Where's Waldo and bring everyone out of the woodwork and build this community together.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Pascale.
Oh, and I was going to say there's, at this time, it's so important to come together and exchange ideas because the localization industry is evolving so rapidly with new technologies and everybody is trying something new. So the exchange of ideas and really getting to know other people will be super beneficial to everyone. And I'm really excited to meet people there because they're all hidden. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you that, I mean, the pace of change in our industry is accelerating, and it can lead to a lot of unknowns in terms of, hey, what kind of technology or tools should we look at? There's also, I kind of sense a bit of anxiety in some roles out there, like, are we going to be all replaced by AI? That kind of concern. And if you are off on your own, or even if you're just in your own company, it's hard to get kind of various different viewpoints, to kind of think things through. What are you thinking about for your first event? When, where, how? What's it going to look like?
So we already have it scheduled. So it will be on May 14th, the Tuesday evening, from 5 to 9 p.m. And it's going to be hosted at the Motorola Solutions office, which is a beautiful building right in the heart of downtown Vancouver. We have a beautiful atrium. There's foosball, ping pong, and just a really big space. So it can hold up to 100 people. And we've got, very generous sponsorship from Scientific. So I'm really excited about this event. We've got Pascale, who I'll leave to her to speak to the panel that she'll be hosting there. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic event. It'll be an opportunity to be our very first, and an opportunity for people to meet each other and get to know each other, and and listen to a panel of experts.
Awesome. And Pascale, tell us little bit about the panel.
Yeah, so we are setting up a very exciting panel about technologies. I know there is out there the fatigue about AI because we're getting bombarded, whether it's in localization or a specific environment that we work in. But I think for this event, we wanted to do it a little bit differently because we're aware of that little fatigue, and we were really trying to bring to the community a holistic view of what is happening. And so what we're going to tackle with our special guest, and we're looking at guests from Scientific, NIMSI, and I believe also memoQ. So it's going to be very nice. And so we're looking at different angles of the industry. So from a technology perspective, I represent also as the moderator, the client side, because this is where I've specialized over the past 2 decades. Then we're going to have also from the research and consulting with NIMSI Insight, and also more from the data specific services with Scientific. So we're going to bring together a very robust conversation. And we're going to tackle the very challenging topic of today. As a localization manager, you have to deliver to the business on a day-to-day routine. And so you have a set of technologies, but yet you also have the pressure of bringing AI workflows and automation. And often we find ourselves like, oh, you're a little bit frozen in time because you don't want to invest because those technologies are just at the beginning, but yet you do have to keep going and innovate. So we're going to find our conversation at that intersection. How do you continuously deliver while also develop those innovative solutions? And while we cannot say what's going to be in the future, how do you look at the trend and really put the foundation that will allow for a very fluid and agile environment in the future so that you can continue to grow and fine tune your ecosystem as you move along? So it's a very wide and rich topic, but this is also what we're trying to do with that community, to really engage our participant with a very rich conversation and help them think through, because this is how we're going to shape the future, by exchanging ideas and really picking everybody's little brains and where they're at. And it really takes a village to build that next phase of the language industry. So we'll try to do that on the small scale.
No, I think that sounds like an awesome learning experience. And a lot of times at events like what you're planning, the event itself is a learning opportunity, but it's also the people that you meet at the event and some of the follow-up conversations. Because I mean, I've oftentimes found myself, working on a project. I don't have the subject matter expertise, but I reach out to somebody that I've met at a networking event or through some type of business association, and just say, hey, I've got this challenge. Can you help me? Can we grab a cup of coffee? So I think there's several layers of value there. Speaking of value, it sounds like an incredible opportunity. Does it cost anything to go to your events?
Nope. This one is free. And we will be planning, free events similar to Slug.
That's amazing, because I mean, a lot of our industry events, if you think about the big ones, the galas, the local worlds, some companies don't have the budgets. Some individuals, if you're a freelance translator, you can't always have the resources for that. So this is great that you're providing that at no cost. And you mentioned that Scientific is sponsoring the event. Mm-hmm. What is that? What are they bringing? Is this going to be food and beverage or?
Yep, they'll be bringing food and beverage, possibly signage, any of the supplies that we need. Motorola Solutions is generously offering up the space and AV equipment, and then Scientific will bring the refreshments and things like that.
Well, Scientific has hosted or sponsored a couple of our Slug events here, and it's been amazing. The one at Daniel's Broiler in Bellevue, God, I mean, the food, the drinks was so they know how to sponsor an event, and also they bring some expertise to the panel as well. So that's great that they're doing that. As this is your first event, what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
Finding people in Vancouver. Getting the word out, finding the right people, encouraging people to join this first event. Other than that, we have other volunteers, like my former colleague, Eduardo La Selva, who is still at Motorola. He's doing a lot of work to prepare and organize. Somebody else has put up his hand, Enzo, to help with the event planning. That's his background. So there's a lot. And then Pascale, who is super passionate and keen to come and help as a fellow Canadian. And so, we have a ton of support in our steering committee. So the main challenge is to get the word out, really. So I really appreciate you, Mark, having us on here to help get that word out. And if anybody listening has colleagues in Vancouver or Seattle or neighboring or plan to visit, this could be a good excuse to come and visit.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question is, do people have to be from Vancouver? But you've already answered that. They can be from Seattle. Because I know that, for example, several of us from the Slug community are planning to come up for the event. So yeah. And I think that you're talking to people from, the East Coast of Canada who might come over as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's open to anyone. And even, on top of that, it's also open to localization professionals and those who are maybe localization curious. Localization works with so many different stakeholders, and the success of a localization program really hinges on stakeholders understanding how localization works and localizers understanding how stakeholders work. And so, if there's product managers, marketers, sales, engineering, anyone who wants to come and be part of this and learn a bit more about how, the operations behind the language industry, the localization industry works, it's open to anyone. Vancouver is actually has a large tech hub, both large enterprises and smaller startups. So I think this would actually be a great opportunity for both, for smaller companies who haven't started to localize yet to learn a little bit more, meet some people, ask some questions. So very open to industry and location.
Yeah, I think you've both worked in roles where localization was kind of new or relatively not well understood in the organization as a whole.
Mhm.
And you have to go in and kind of educate your colleagues and the other stakeholders, what localization is, why it's important. And I think that there's probably there. I'm sure there are people in the startup community and some of these other industries in Vancouver that are in similar roles where they are maybe the one of three people on the Loc team or just the only one person. What advice would you give? Of course, I was going to say, what advice would you give to those people in that kind of situation? One is get out and build your network, right? But what else would you advise? Pascale?
Well, it just develop your grit, because it's about it takes some time, but I think it's a very rewarding position to be in when you start, especially with a startup. But actually building up your network and talking to people will help give you ideas on how to spread the word. I'm sorry. And also create that storytelling that is important for your business
Mm-hmm.
partners, because localization, the language industry, and creating that language experience is extremely complex. But the secret is really to simplify and tell that story. So meeting people at an event like Slug or VLUG is very important, because you get to understand, how can I simplify it for my business partners, and how can I tell the story, and why is it so important to get it right? And while it's unique in each environment, because it's business specific, you also are able to get some visibility on best practices and how to, and basically the how to.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I started in the localization industry, there was no best practices. I mean, localization, it was so obscure. Most people didn't know what it was. And so I had to learn and figure it out on my own. And I've made mistakes. And then finally, when you have the aha moment, you're like, oh, I speak business. I speak my business, the
Mhm.
same language than my business partner. And, you can unlock so much potential. And if we can help by, sharing some of those learnings, that's going to be extremely, uh, rewarding for me, because they can avoid several years of learning by,
Mhm.
but, so yeah.
And Paula, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, also I touched on before, really being curious about your stakeholders and really understand not only how their workflows and processes work, but what motivates them, what do they care about? And then literally translating your requirements into their language. So when you're talking to marketing, find out what they care about and figure out how to integrate that global mindset. Look at your stakeholders' metrics and find ways to regionalize them. Marketing has a wealth of metrics, engineering may, product management might. And finance, revenue numbers. Try to get finance to break down those revenue numbers from EMEA to Europe, Middle East, Africa at a minimum. And if you can drill down even further. So, just understanding and showing that you care and you want to understand how they work. I've found that that's been really helpful. Then they ask me, well, what are your pain points? How does localization work? And then you end up integrating your processes together and, you know,
Yeah.
um,
And I'd like to add, when you look at a business, and I know we specialize in the language industry and we talk specifically like translations or localization, but it goes beyond, because you have also your business partners who write the copy and who write the content in English, and the source basically. And I think what's when you look at it from as a whole, language is probably one of the assets in a business that's the most undervalued.
mhm,
And when you zoom out and you really think about, okay, where do I fit in this cycle, and how can I best help and support the business from my expertise, and
mhm,
how do I connect with the content creators and also the customers? I think that really helps set your team and your program for success. But that, you need to also talked to people who have done that and also looked at certain ecosystems. So thinking it through that process takes a lot of efforts. And in communities like VLUG or SLUG and other localization community, when you speak with people who have paved the way, it's really you get lots of ideas to accomplish it faster now.
Exactly. And you can share that with your management team, right? If you want to implement something new, if you want to innovate and, you're getting pushback, you can say, well, without divulging, company secrets and things of others, your coworkers, you can say, well, this was done successfully in this way. And you can kind of point to that and show the use case. People like to see, has it worked before? And of course, every business is different, like Pascale said, but at least, you've got these examples.
I'm just reflecting on the amount of information that you've shared and it condensed into a very short time there. And I'm thinking that's the best, I guess, advertisement for the benefit of attending an event like VLUG is people get to meet people like you who are deep subject matter experts and get to pick your brain and get to kind of, use you as a resource. And I know the learning goes both ways because you guys are always very curious and trying to understand more about challenges that other people are facing and how they're doing that, etc. So it's just a win-win for everybody. But yeah, I mean, just you guys have so much knowledge and you're just two of, let's say there's going to be 50, 60, 70 people there, maybe 100 people. What a tremendous learning opportunity. Let me ask you, another thing that we do in SLUG is we try at some point during the event to see, who's hiring and give them a chance to talk about any jobs that they're recruiting for and also who's looking for jobs. And I think that's another important aspect as well. Do you guys, do you plan to do something like that?
I do now.
Hint, hint.
No, I think it was a really great idea at the last SLUG event. It was, I think it's a fantastic idea. So yes, absolutely.
Well, and the reason I put that out there is there are some people that are always looking for, whether it's an internship, a new job, or to hire people, because you guys have both been in leadership positions and, one of the biggest challenges is just recruiting the right people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And awesome. I think also what we're planning is icebreaker because we want to make, so we really want to give, because it's a new community and people are really in silo in Vancouver, or at least we feel like it. Maybe we'll discover something different. Yeah. But so we want to make sure we have an icebreaker activity so that we can really help everyone there to engage in the conversation, make new friends, and make it worthwhile for them to attend.
That's awesome. And I'm really curious and excited to see how you do that, because I think it is really important. A lot of times people go to events and they see one or two people that they know, and then they create this little cluster, and somebody like me shows up and I'm like, I don't know anybody here who I can talk to, right? And it's nice to have that icebreaker. So that's very considerate. If people want to find out more about VLUG, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, we have a LinkedIn group, VLUG, and then we also have a meetup group, which is where we are advertising the event.
Awesome. And I'm assuming it's okay if people had specific questions, they could reach out to both of you via LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
Okay. And I will put links to both the LinkedIn group and the meetup group in the show notes for this podcast. Mm-hmm. What are your plans for the future in terms of, do you plan to do 2 events a year or more or less, or?
Yeah, I think that's TBD. I'd like to, see how the first event goes, get as much feedback from everybody as we can. One idea that I had for future, is to give people an opportunity to tell their story. People who are in localization often say they fall into localization, right? They're studying something or they're working here, and then all of a sudden localization just appears and we fall in love with it. So I personally find it really interesting to hear people's career journeys and career paths. And, localizers can do anything. Like there's a lot of localizers I know that have moved into different roles. I know one in Vancouver, she used to be my manager way back in the day. She works at SAP, and she's now the COO of the Canada lab for SAP. And then myself, my last year at Motorola, I moved from localization into a product chief of staff, director of business operations role, because localization is so operations focused, and I discovered a passion for that. And so localization has that opportunity to touch on so many different facets of the business, and maybe a new passion is sparked. And so I think it would be really interesting, to hear people's career journeys and where they want to go, and then give them the opportunity to hear other people's career journeys that may give them ideas on things that they want to do. So that's one of my ideas. And then also give people an opportunity to present, if they don't have a lot of opportunity, VLUG, I want to be like a very safe, inclusive space, and we're all there to support each other. And if somebody wants that opportunity, then, talking about yourself, you're the subject matter expert. So nothing you need to memorize specifically. So that was one idea. How about you, Pascale?
Paula, you've touched about on the important aspect of the community, but I think I just want to add, because what I observe in the language industry is that we have a strong majority of personalities that have a very, very entrepreneurial mindset, or mindset driven, I should say. And I think that's part of how do you create your job? And because for so many of us, whether you're from the client side, the LSP side, or the technology side, we had to create our roles. We had to create the value that we bring to our customers, whether it's internal customers, whether it's client side, we had to create that value. And how do you create that value in a very shifting or rapidly shifting world? And I think it's relevant for the language industry, but it's relevant in any industry, because right now it's all up for grab. And what we've learned from the language industry, I think, can be very helpful to share all together, because we created our path. So how do we how do we how do we share that and really bring that value?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I really love the industry, and one of the things I love about it is just the international aspect of it. There's so many different languages and different mindsets and different cultures, and it's great. And it is very entrepreneurial, because if you think about it, the majority of the companies are actually small, medium-sized businesses, where the founders or the founder's family is still running it. And then some of them evolve into to the huge companies, but even the big ones continually have to kind of reinvent themselves because of the technology that we use. And so it's very exciting. I also really appreciate the work that people like you guys are doing to bring value to the community itself, and I see a lot of that in this community. I mean, think about the local lunches, for example. There's no real reward there other than just kind of providing a venue to meet with other people in the industry and share information. And I find that there's a couple things here. I find that people are very, very open in this industry to sharing information and ideas and kind of exchanging. Whereas in some industries, it's like, oh, you work for the competition, I can't talk to you. I can't even be seen with you, right? I mean, there's just, this hard stop. And I think that we have some frenemies in the industry where we compete, but we still get together and share ideas and stuff. The other thing, though, that could go back to your original point is to talk about people's journeys here. If you look at some industries, and I don't want to create stereotypes, but let's just say, people go into, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but like going into, a Wall Street role or going into finance, it's kind of a cookie cutter approach. Okay. I go to a school, I get my MBA, and then I go work for this firm, and I work in this position for X number of years, and then I make partner in it, and okay, I'm going to get slammed for that because I know there are exceptions, but in most industries, there is just kind of a defined, a very well-defined career path and trajectory, which can help you because you know what's expected of you. But But at the same time, it can kind of be like, well, what if you're kind of non-traditional in your approach or your background? And in our industry, every person I talk to, many of them are accidental localization professionals. But people, it's like once they get into the industry, they can't leave. I had a conversation with Renato Beninato, maybe, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And, we were talking about, it's like Hotel California or the mafia. Once you're in, you can never leave. But there's something there that keeps people. I mean, you guys have been in this industry. Pascale, I wouldn't believe that you've been in the industry for you said 2 decades. But what has kept you in our industry for so long? Both of you.
Well, I'd love to, let me say that I'd love to add, how this industry doesn't have a cookie cutter approach to roles, and you create your own path. And I'd like to connect it to language itself, right? Because when you look at language evolves, and when you have this program, you put the machine translation, the automation, the terminology, and when you think you have it all set, the words are evolving, the expressions are evolving, and what you just set up is already obsolete. So it's constantly evolving. And what has kept me in this industry is part of that, because, I was a trends creationist, basically a market expert, and it was all about that creative aspect. But then technology expanded. Then and it's like you start peeling the onion, and it's transforming, and you keep transforming yourself and learning. And so it's constantly changing and transforming. And that piece of building a program and really refining it over and over, because it's constantly changing, that's what keeps me. And I thought, maybe I'll do something different, but generative AI is now available to the public. So it keeps changing and evolving. And to me, that's the most exciting. Like, how do you keep evolving along with technology and the new business context? Makes sense of it,
Totally makes sense. Paula?
Yeah. I mean, when I moved into my other role, my director of business operations role, I could not bear the thought of leaving localization. So I actually reached out to Renato and asked him, hey, how can I stay involved with localization while I'm, doing this new role? And he told me about the office hours. You can come on as a freelance consultant. And so so I'm doing that, part-time with NIMSY right now, but it started because I wanted to keep a foot in the door for localization, because, I would say you can take the girl out of localization, but you can't take localization out of the girl. So what I love the most about the industry is we've touched on just about everything, but I love the connecting aspect. I love the diversity. I love, you said entrepreneur. I believe that we are all intrapreneurs. We're I love that term, entrepreneur within an organization. So I love the diversity of working with all the different stakeholders, and connecting them. Localization is one of those unique roles where we have that bird's eye view. Everyone's working on their stuff, and it's our job to make sure that everyone is aligned through an international lens. But the byproduct of that is oftentimes connecting these groups with each other outside of international. And I love playing that role. I heard Natalie Kelly once say the term global glue. And I love playing that role and learning about the other facets of the business and how it all comes together. And yeah, that's the part that I love the most. And then on the, talking about reaching out to our community and leaning on our peers, I can tell you that I've been in the localization industry as well for 2 decades. The last 10 years has really been focused on strategy and building that out. But I can tell you, as I grew and learned in that new role, there was not once that I reached out to rando localizer who had a role that looked like they specialized in what I needed. And they didn't reply to me. That never happened. Every time I reached out to someone, they would reply and give me 10, 15, 20 minutes of their time. That's what our community is like. I don't think I could ever leave.
No, that's totally awesome. And it's kind of funny because I think we all come from different mindsets. And I was talking about entrepreneurial firms, and I realized, I've been on the service provider side, my whole industry, and you guys are coming from a little bit different perspective. And so that entrepreneur thing totally makes sense, because you've got to kind of go in and invent something in a kind of solidified organization. And so, so we're both entrepreneurial, but from different sides of the coin. I've read this, and I feel it. One of the keys to kind of being happy, what do they call that? Or just staying young and youthful is always to be learning, and then to have solid relationships around with you. And you both have touched on that there's massive learning opportunities, both in terms of the people you meet, but also the industry itself forces you to learn because it's evolving so quickly. And there's so many people that you can meet and kind of reach out to. I love going to the local industry events. I don't know how much work I get done because I have so much fun just meeting and talking with people, but eventually that does lead to business, but it's not all about that. Sometimes it's just the fellowship. And so that's why, you guys launching VLUG is so important, because now you've already been part of that global glue, but you're making your adhesion power that much stronger. So thank you so much for kicking off VLUG and taking the leadership role there. And thank you for being on memoQ Talks.
Thank you.
So
Cheers, guys. See you in Vancouver. It's May 14th from 5 to 9 p.m., right?
correct. Yeah.
More information in the show notes. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining memoQ Talks, where we talked with industry leaders about their experiences and lessons learned to gain new insights about what works best across all areas of localization. Join us next time on memoQ Talks.